The alarm goes off. Monday. Again. Before your eyes are even open, it's there, that small weight on your chest. You already know the shape of the whole day. The coffee, the commute, the inbox that filled up while you slept. And underneath it, the quiet feeling that you have to earn your place here, that rest is something you'll pay for later. You've done this for years. You'll do it again tomorrow. And somewhere down low, a voice you never say out loud asks the obvious thing. Is this really what a life is supposed to feel like? Step back. It's an odd thing to do to an animal. You're the only one on Earth that wakes to a machine shrieking instead of the sun, just to trade your daylight for a number in a database. Here's the strange part. The alarm, the boss, the job itself. For almost the entire human story, none of it existed. Not the work, not the schedule, not even the clock you measure it with. For nearly 300,000 years, your ancestors woke up with nowhere to be. Same body as yours, same brain, no deadlines, no commute, no one to report to on Monday, because Monday hadn't been invented yet. So what did they do all day? The honest answer is stranger and far more freeing than they survived. And it isn't one answer. It's about 8 of them stacked on top of each other, and the last one might quietly rearrange how you see your own calendar. That dread you feel on a Sunday night, it isn't a flaw in you, it's a clue. Let's follow it back. Start with the scale, because your brain can't really feel it on its own. Your species, people exactly like you, same brain, same body, has been around for roughly 300,000 years. Farming is only about 10,000 years old. The office, younger still. So shrink the whole thing into a single day. 1 clock, midnight to midnight, where every minute stands for about 200 years. For almost that entire day, morning, afternoon, deep into the golden evening, you are a hunter and a gatherer. You live off the land. You know every plant, every track, every face around your fire. The first farm doesn't show up until 11:54 at night, 6 minutes before midnight. After being fully human for an entire day, somebody finally plants a seed on purpose. The first boss, the first wage, the first time card, the last few seconds before midnight. And the part you're living in right now, the glowing screens, the 9 to 5, the Sunday dread, isn't even a second. It's the final tick of the clock. Sit with that. Almost everything you call normal life is a tiny scribble crammed into the last instant of a very long day. The way you live isn't the human default. It's the newest, most experimental sliver of who we are. So for the other 23 hours and 54 minutes, the actual bulk of being human, what was the day even made of? Because you've probably already been handed an answer, and it's wrong. Here's the story most of us absorbed about those hundreds of thousands of years. That life back then was, in the famous phrase, nasty, brutish, and short. A constant, desperate scramble. No stored food, no safety. Every morning, a fresh fight not to starve before sundown. It's a tidy story, and it does one job well. It makes the cubicle feel like a gift. Be grateful. At least nothing's trying to eat you before your first coffee. There's just one problem. When people finally went and checked, the numbers refused to cooperate. In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Lee went to the edge of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa to live with hunter-gatherers called the Juhoansi, people still feeding themselves the old way, off the land, with no farming at all. And Lee didn't just watch and write something poetic. He counted. He weighed the food they carried home. He added up the calories. He timed, with a stopwatch, exactly how many hours they spent getting it. Then, he ran the math. And the numbers stopped people cold. To feed themselves, the Juhoansi spent somewhere between 12 and 19 hours a week finding food. Not a day, a week. Take the middle of that range, and it's barely 2 hours a day. And then the food was handled. In a desert. No supermarket, no fridge, no paycheck. In the setting that was supposed to be the hardest game humanity ever played. At one point, Lee asked a man why his people hadn't taken up farming, like some of their neighbors had.
What?
And the man gave an answer people have quoted ever since. "Why should we?" he said, "when there are so many mongongo nuts in the world?" Read that again. That's not a man scrambling to survive. That's a man who thinks your lifestyle sounds like a scam. Around the same time, another anthropologist, Marshall Salins, gathered data from foraging societies all over the world. Different continents, different climates. Same strange pattern. Not much time spent working. And he gave these people a name that flipped the story upside down. He called them the original Affluent Society. Affluent, the rich ones. Not because they had a lot, they could carry everything they owned on their backs, but because they needed so little, and what little they needed, the world mostly handed them. There's a kind of wealth, Salins said, that comes not from having more, but from wanting less. So picture the real day. The food run is short, and not even every day. And most of the food, this surprised people too, didn't come from dramatic hunts. It came from gathering. Roots, nuts, berries, fruit. Quiet, reliable work. Much of it done by the women. The hunts got the stories. The gathering kept everyone alive. Which meant that on a huge number of days, by early afternoon, the work was simply over. So what filled the rest of the light? Fixing a tool, or making a new one. Talking. A lot of talking. Sitting with the kids, who ran in a loose pack of every age, looked after by basically everyone. And, Solons noticed this, sleep. These supposedly desperate survivors napped more reliably than people in almost any other society on Earth. The people one bad day from death turn out to be the best-rested humans in history. Now, here's where it gets complicated, and where I have to be honest with you. Because that picture, short hours, leisure, the carefree caveman lounging in paradise while you sit in traffic, escaped the journals and became a meme. And like most things that sound too good, it's only about half true. Go back to that famous number, 15 hours a week. Here's what almost nobody tells you. It only counted the time spent actually out finding food, the hunting, and the gathering. That's it. When other researchers pushed on it, Lee went back and recalculated. He added in the rest of the real work, making and mending tools, butchering animals, cracking and grinding nuts for hours, hauling water. Add all that in, and the work week climbs past 42 hours. 42. Longer than the average American work week today. And even 42 left something out. Lee's own colleague, the anthropologist Nancy Howell, was right there in the field. And she pointed out the obvious thing the stopwatch missed. None of it counted childcare. None of it counted the constant, invisible labor of keeping small humans alive. And some of that famous leisure? Howell found it wasn't always blissful rest. Sometimes people lay still in the heat because they were exhausted and hungry. A low, grinding hunger that never fully switched off. The Juhoansi were often thin, often small, and on average, they did not live long. And that perfectly equal, perfectly peaceful band? Too clean as well. Look closely and you find real differences in status, in belongings, in power. Human beings were never one simple thing. So no, it wasn't paradise. Hold on to that, because the real revelation was never that their life was easy. It's something much weirder than easy. Here's the twist that actually matters. The shock was never that they worked less than you. Some of them didn't. Some weeks they worked more. The shock is that for them, work as a separate thing did not exist at all. And that fits with the hunger and the hardship we just saw, even though it sounds like a contradiction. Their hard days were real, but none of it was a transaction. They suffered as free people inside their own lives, not as rented hours inside someone else's. The difference that matters isn't easy versus hard. It's free versus owned. Sit with how strange that is. No job, no shift, no clocking in, no part of the day fenced off and labeled work, sitting across the table from another part labeled life. Finding food, making things, telling stories, raising kids, lying in the shade. It was all one fabric, one continuous life woven together. You didn't go to work, and you didn't come home from it. There was no line to cross because nobody had drawn one. Take the Hadza in northern Tanzania, one of the last groups still living mostly by foraging, studied for years by the anthropologist Frank Marlowe. A Hadza man doesn't have a job hunting. A Hadza woman doesn't clock in to dig for roots. If the family's hungry, they go get food, often with friends, and it frequently looks a lot like a walk with people you like that happens to end in dinner. The work and the hanging out are the same motion. You can't pull them apart because they were never apart to begin with. Which means the thing you do every weekday, travel somewhere, become someone's labor for 8 or 9 hours, then leave and try to turn back into yourself, would be, to almost every human who ever lived, flat out unrecognizable. Not hard, not unfair. Unrecognizable. Like explaining a quarterly performance review to someone who's never heard of a week.
What?
Because here's the punchline. You can't dread Monday in a world that never bothered to invent Monday. So if a job isn't ancient, if it isn't simply human nature, then somebody, somewhere, invented the thing that's wearing you down. When? And why would anyone do that to us? The answer is about 10,000 years ago. The thing that invented your job was farming. We tell the farming story as the big win. Humanity settles down, grows a surplus, and civilization blooms. But the people who lived through the switch paid for it with their bodies. And we know that because their bones are still talking. In Illinois, there's a site called Dixon Mounds. Archaeologists uncovered around 800 skeletons there. One population, one place, caught right at the moment it shifted from foraging to farming corn. A before and an after in the same ground. So they compared them. The farmers had about 50% more signs of malnutrition in their teeth, 4 times the iron deficiency anemia, 3 times the bone scarring from infectious disease, because now people lived crowded together, next to their animals and their waste. Their spines showed more wear from bending over fields all day. And life expectancy didn't rise when they took up farming. It fell, from roughly 26 years down to about 19. One scientist looked at all of it and called the invention of agriculture the worst mistake in the history of the human race. So why would anyone keep doing it?
What?
Farming was never a clever choice made one bright afternoon. People took it up under pressure. More mouths, less wild food, no path back. And in the bargain, they traded quality for quantity. Farming couldn't make life better, but it could make more life, more babies, more bodies on the same patch of dirt. And more always wins. Not because it's better, because it outbreeds everything that came before it. So now, Crowded villages, aching backs, worse food, shorter lives. Except farming created one brand new thing no forager had ever held. And that one thing is where your job truly comes from. That new thing was surplus. For the first time, you could grow more food than you needed today and store it. Grain in a pot, grain in a silo. Wealth you could pile up and keep. And the moment food could be stored, it could be owned. And the moment it could be owned, it could be taken, counted, guarded, inherited, fought over. A forager's real wealth was knowledge and relationships, things you can't steal from a person and still have them work. But a full granary, a fenced field, that you can seize, that you can sit on top of and charge admission to. And so, for the first time in the human story, a few people could live off everyone else's effort. People who grew nothing, hunted nothing, gathered nothing, and ended up holding the most. Kings, priests, landlords, a whole class whose entire role was owning the thing the rest of us had to work on. That's the moment your job is born. Because once a few people own the land and the grain, everyone else has to earn access to it. You work their field. You hand over a share. Your day stops being yours and starts being something you owe. Work becomes scheduled. Work becomes owned. Work gets fenced off from your life and parceled out in pieces. And as Solons put it, poverty is not a small pile of possessions. The forager with almost nothing wasn't poor. Poverty is a relationship between people, some with much, some with little, in the same place, looking at each other. In that sense, poverty isn't ancient at all. Poverty is an invention of civilization. From there, the same deal just keeps changing costume for 10,000 years. The field becomes the Lord's estate. The estate becomes the factory. The factory becomes the office. The office becomes the glowing rectangle in your pocket that buzzes at 9 p.m. with one more thing. Same bargain every time. Your time for access to a life someone else controls. But there's one last layer. I saved it for the end, because it's the one that genuinely rewires how you'll hear your alarm tomorrow. Quick breath. Because so far, we've pinned your Monday on dead kings, stored grain, and 800 skeletons in a field in Illinois. Stay with me. It's about to get more personal. Because even after your job was invented, one giant piece of your Monday was still missing. The clock. For almost all of human history, nobody worked by the hour, because there was no hour. Time wasn't a number. Time was the task. You worked until the thing was done, until the field was reaped, the bread was baked. People measured time by the job in front of them. In one place, a stretch of time was literally a rice cooking. The day bent around the work, the weather, the light, not the other way around. Then came the factories, and a historian named E.P. Thompson documented in incredible detail exactly what happened next, because this part is recent enough that we still have the receipts. To run a factory, owners needed every worker moving as one, so they installed a new kind of boss, the clock. Not a tool for telling time anymore, a leash for moving people. The factory bell, the whistle. At one ironworks around the year 1700, a man called the monitor logged every worker's arrival and departure to the minute in 2 columns, come and run. Show up late, you were fined. Linger, you were fined. Time, for the first time, had become money, docked straight out of your pay. No longer yours to live, just currency to spend, with someone else keeping the ledger. And people hated it. They fought it. Here's the best part. For generations, English workers simply refused to work on Mondays. They did it so reliably, it earned a name. They called it Saint Monday. It took the factory owners the better part of a century to crush it, and the consolation prize they finally handed over to buy off everyone else is the very thing you now call the weekend. So the next time a stranger asks, "So, what do you do?" and somehow it lands like, "What are you worth?" Remember, the question only makes sense at all because 2 centuries ago, somebody turned your time into a currency and then convinced you that you were the one spending it. So come back to you. Tomorrow morning, the alarm. When Sunday night settles onto your chest like a weight. When you feel guilty for resting on your one day off. When a job title starts to feel like a verdict on whether you're worth keeping. That is not a flaw in you. It's not weakness or laziness or some failure to be grateful enough. It's 300,000 years of a completely different rhythm. Varied, self-paced, deeply social, woven into one unbroken life. Running inside a machine barely 200 years old, built to measure you by the hour and bill you for the gaps. Of course it aches. You're running ancient software on brand new hostile hardware. The mismatch you feel every Monday isn't proof that something's broken in you. It might be the most human thing about you. And to be clear, none of this is a pitch to go back. Nobody's romanticizing a toothache with no dentist or burying half your children. The antibiotics, the clean water, the warm bed you're in right now are real gifts your ancestors would have called magic. This was never about going back. It's about understanding the ache and giving it a name. So tomorrow, the alarm will go off. Monday, again. You'll still get up. You'll still go. Most of us have to. That part is real. But now, you can hear it for what it actually is. Not the voice of nature. Not the way it's always been. Just a 10,000-year-old invention, wound up by a 200-year-old clock, ringing for a 300,000-year-old you. You were never built for this. And now, you know why. So let me leave you with one honest question. If tomorrow were suddenly completely yours, no job, no clock, no inbox, what would you actually do with it? Really picture it. Then tell me down in the comments. I read them. And if some part of you felt seen just now, stay. Because next time, we're going somewhere even closer to home. Why you wake at 3 in the morning, heart pounding, staring into the dark, unable to fall back asleep. Your ancestors already know the answer, and they've been trying to tell